Gigantic
Pop.
Gigantic Pop number 8. And here we are once again. That's Matt Morgan's favorite song, that intro music. Look at him dancing to it. He can't help but get down when he hears it. And today, the three of us, Raj Giri, Matt Morgan, Glenn Rubenstein, are here to talk about Back to the Future, the greatest movie of all time, question mark? Perhaps for our generation. Matt looks skeptical. Matt, what's a better movie than Back to the Future?
You can't put me in a spot like that.
Exactly, because there is none.
There isn't any.
It's one of my favorites, no question. It absolutely is, and it's something that is entrenched in every human being as we speak. The wish to go back in time, obviously.
Yes. In fact, I'm sure this comparison's been made, but I'm just saying, and now I've never said this before, I think for our generation, this is our generation's version of It's a Wonderful Life. The movie that everybody knows, everybody gets the references to.
Glenn.
What?
Glenn.
What?
Whoa, you're horsies there. I'm a huge fan and all, but it's your life. Really?
It's a Wonderful Life. I think Back to the Future is the Generation X version of It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life gets played every single Christmas for the last how many decades?
Okay, well, Matt, have you turned on cable lately? Because there's a Back to the Future marathon every weekend on cable.
It's true, but people don't associate it with a holiday. So.
No, which is even better. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, it's a Christmas story. I need to watch it at Christmas.
Because it plays more.
Yes, but Back to the Future, I mean, look, everybody knows it. Everybody gets the references of our generation. Like, it's the type of movie that you watch. It makes you feel good. You go through a range of emotions. Everybody has the same thing where it's like, oh, what would I go back in time and change? Because as you said, like, there's a human instinct with that. I think
Biff had it right with the Sports Almanac. Absolutely, he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the first thing I would do is take care of business.
It was pretty. I don't know how many times I'm watching a football game. Like, man, if I had that almanac, that would have been perfect. Right. But with Back to the Future, you know, when you're talking about greatest movies of all time, as far as, you know, combining comedy and action adventure and sci-fi and romance, there's not many movies that have done it better. I can't think of any. You know, a lot of the other great movies are like just a drama or just a comedy, but this just combines so many different elements seamlessly that it's. I can rewatch it anytime it's on. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll sit with this for a little while.
You know what's weird? I remember as a kid being so looking forward to Back to the Future 2 coming out because it was like, oh my God, they're making another one. This could be amazing. And then I remember watching it and I was like, okay, this future thing, this hoverboard's cool, but this future thing kind of, I don't know, man. But now, like Back to the Future 2, everything else where they go back to the original movie and stuff, I think is just so brilliant. I almost rotate which one I'm in the mood to watch the most because sometimes I want to watch part 3. Part 3 was always the sleeper for me where I was like, part 3 is all right. But now I like, the more time goes on, the more I like part 3.
So I like Westerns. So 3 was cool for me, but like 2, I thought 2 was awesome because of the little things they put in there to show that you were in the future, right? Like you said, the hoverboard, that's huge. Like every kid remembers that. And again, Biff doing what everybody on God's green earth would be doing. They had the chance to go back in time. I'm telling you, Biff is an undercover babyface in this.
I'm telling you, for years, I didn't realize that was Biff in part 3, that he was the cowboy dude that was Michael J. Fox's nemesis. I didn't realize that was him because he looked and sounded so completely different. That wasn't until years later that I realized it was Biff.
He had a big stash and everything, but you didn't know that was Biff, huh?
No, not the first few times I saw it. And here we are. We're just a few days removed from Back to the Future Day, October 21st, 2015. So we're in the future of where Back to the Future was, but they got, there were a lot of things that they got right in that movie.
The Cubs. Cubs win the World Series.
Yeah, Cubs winning the World Series.
That was laughable when that came out. For everybody that remembers, that was laughable.
Yeah. I mean, and Tom Wilson. I mean, we should talk about this a bit, but I think like the more I see it, I think Tom Wilson, the job he does as Biff and Buford and even Griff, like. Yeah, it's just I've met the man twice before.
Wow.
At a corporate event.
At a stand-up show. Rewind.
Okay.
Tell us about your experience meeting him.
Okay, so he was in a video game, as a lot of actors were in the early 90s. He was in Wing Commander 3, and it had Mark Hamill, Malcolm McDowell, and Tom Wilson. So they had this party, and like, as far as video game parties go, like I've been at like a Sony party where Outkast played and it was packed, or the Foo Fighters
Oh my
played.
God. Really?
But this was like a little party. There were like 30 people there. And we're just sitting there, like you get just everyone's talking to Mark Hamill, like, yo, so Star Wars. This was like 1992 or 93. And Malcolm McDowell is just, British and crazy and doing his thing. But Tom Wilson like gets up and starts emceeing the event and telling jokes. He was just hanging out. And what was funny is I talked to him I was like, I was watching TV in the summer of '89, and there was a TV version of Turner and Hooch, and you played the Tom Hanks role. And that was like the weirdest thing to me when I was a kid. And he was like, oh my God, you saw that? Remember that? I was like, yeah. And, I started listing off all these other things he'd done. He was just the nicest guy, because I think he has all these stories about other things that aren't Back to the Future. But that's why he famously has the Back to the Future song, because everybody wants to talk to him about Back to the Future so much. He wrote a song to answer everybody's question. But if you go up to him and you're like, hey, you were in Blood In, Blood Out, what was that like? He'll just start telling you stories because he never gets a chance.
That's pretty cool. That's cool.
Really nice guy. Like one of the nicest comedians I've ever met.
There are some actors that will own it. Like they're like, this is what I'm known for. This is what I'm going to get asked about, and I'm fine with it. And that I'll just keep talking about it all the time. And then there are some that get annoyed with it and want to talk about new projects or what they're working on next. And it sounds like he's cool with both. So that's really cool.
He is, and he goes to different colleges and even acting schools where he talks to these young and up and coming actors or people that are in college that go to school specifically for production and things like that, and even theater for that matter. I've seen him on YouTube, and again, like you said, Glenn, he's hilarious. He's super charismatic. He's charismatic as hell.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this more in a little bit about how Eric Stoltz was originally supposed to be Marty.
Yeah, there's photos. They actually shot. I'm kind of obsessed with this. They shot 75% of the movie with Eric Stoltz as Marty.
No way.
They redid it all. Yeah.
Yeah, they
look it up on YouTube.
There's footage out there of it. In fact, I went on eBay, and because I've heard the story so many times. I'll tell you about this. So. Originally, here's what it came down to when they were doing Back to the Future. They wanted Michael J. Fox. He was on Family Ties, and Meredith Baxter Birney was pregnant, so she missed like half a season. So they went to the creator of Family Ties and said, we want Michael J. Fox for this. Here's the script. And they said, I can't give him the script because if I give him the script, I'm going to tell him he can't do this, and he's going to hate me because we need him with Meredith Baxter Birney gone for half our season. So Universal's second and third choice were Eric Stoltz and C. Thomas Howell. Now, if C. Thomas Howell had been cast, Back to the Future would probably be a basic cable classic that everybody says like, oh yeah, I really like that movie. It sounds kind of charming and weird, but it was good, but it wouldn't have been the same.
No.
But he was very like B-level Michael J. Fox. C. Thomas Howell.
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox, everybody could associate with Michael J. Fox.
Yes.
We all grew up with him. Like you said, as Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties, but also Teen Wolf that came out after. Like he did so much stuff that we all thought he was like our friend. I'd say it sounds like a weirdo here, but that's how we saw him as a child.
Absolutely.
He had a very likable persona that you just naturally want him to succeed. And you're rooting for him and you're in. Whereas Eric Stoltz, I guess he was very intense.
He has a stuck up, snobby, please punch me in my nose face.
But so here's how it happened though. So the producers were like, C. Thomas Howell is our second choice, but Universal, Eric Stoltz just did a little movie. He just finished a movie called Mask, the true story of Rocky Dennis. If you've seen Mask with Eric Stoltz and Cher, it's one of the most, as a kid, that was like one of the first movies where I just cried my eyes out. Was so moved by it. Huge success, yes. And he's amazing in it. He is absolutely amazing in that movie as Rocky Dennis. Under all that makeup, the performance. So Universal was like, this kid's going to win an Oscar. We believe in him. He should be Marty McFly. So what happened was they shot 75% of the movie. And Eric Stoltz, if you've ever seen anything he done, he's not a comedy guy. He was playing this like it was serious the entire time. And finally, Robert Zemeckis and the producer said, this isn't working. But Matt, as luck would have it, by then, Meredith Baxter Birney was back from her pregnancy. They went back to the producers of Family Ties. They said, okay, now we can let him out to do this. But Michael J. Fox for 4 months. By the way, this movie came out in July of 1985. they started reshooting this in January of 1985, and Michael J. Fox for 3 months would do Family Ties during the day, go home, sleep for 2 hours, have a driver pick him up. He would go shoot Back to the Future at night and shoot it on the weekends. And he just basically didn't sleep for the better part of these 3 months to do both things back to back. But, you know, he probably wouldn't have been cast. It probably would have been C. Thomas Howell if the Eric Stoltz do-over hadn't happened.
Okay, so let's get into it real quick. So, like, his actual acting in it is night and day. What sets it apart from other movies? So, like, the little things, the little nuances that we talk about in pro wrestling on how characters get over is not the moves themselves. It's the ish they do in between the moves, their mannerisms, their body language. Those are the things that get a character over, like The Rock and Stone Cold right now as we speak LA Knight. Things like that, right? Same with how he played Marty McFly, with simple, like the little nuances with every time his mom, when he went back into time, would like rub his knee or try to hit on him, and his like huge bug eyes he would have, and his reaction to that, being totally grossed out by it, but not able to tell her, P.S. I'm your son. Yeah. This is creepy. All of his little nuances with his body language was super over with me. He's such a good actor. God, he was such a good actor. In 3 months, you're telling me, in just a few months he shot that in is even more impressive.
Yeah.
And I guess there's still a couple of scenes in there where Eric Stoltz is in it. That like there's a scene where he's running from the terrorists. That's actually Eric Stoltz. So there were a couple scenes that are still in there where and the scene where Biff is talking to Marty, and I think one of the back shots before Marty punched him.
Yeah, you see Eric Stoltz's hand, I think, at one point. It's crazy, but there's photos and footage online. I would show it, but I don't want us to get a copyright strike. But it's interesting because fans for years have been saying, like, will they ever release this? But every time there's a new Blu-ray version, they just put a little bit more out and a little bit more out. Because originally it was like one still photo we would see in a book as a kid. And now they have some scenes from it. So it's one of the great, fascinating, like, what ifs there was a joke about it in the new Flash movie, in the alternate reality, that, they say the guy has a Back to the Future tattoo of Eric Stoltz, and he's like, I thought that was Michael J. Fox. Like, Michael J. Fox, you mean the guy from Flashdance? No, from Footloose. The guy from Footloose. He's like, no, that's Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon from Top Gun. Like, they just go on and do this whole alternate reality ripple effect of what would have happened if Eric Stoltz would have been cast in Back to the Future. But Roger, I want to talk about this. We talk about these stories about when we were kids. Like, what was your experience of seeing the original Back to the Future?
I remember it was the biggest thing. That movie was like number one for like 4 or 5 months. And I think it got knocked down for 1 week because Teen Wolf became number one. I mean, you want to talk about a banner year. That's like as amazing of a year as an actor can have, because you had the number one show with Family Ties or number
so
two.
Good.
So good.
So good. Teen Wolf too. I loved all of them. I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah, and Back to the Future and having all that. So I saw it like a couple months after it was out.
Really?
Not knowing what to expect. And after that, I think that was the first, or after E.T., that was the first movie I saw in the theater multiple times. I think I saw it like 3-4 times. And then, because then it came out in the dollar theater. So we saw it a couple more times then, but just fell in love with it. Loved it the first time. It's one of the few movies, like I showed it to my daughters. They had no interest in seeing it. They watched it, fell in love. They watch it all the time now. And it's great. It's not dated in the 80s. Like, there's some great 80s stuff in it, but it's something that people in this generation can watch and still get into, especially with the action and the adventure and how all the close calls that they have in all three of those movies. And I think it just keeps you at the edge of your seat.
Just because like we're in our 40s does not mean like someone in their 20s doesn't wish they can go back or go forward in the future. It's like the most commonly wish. If you ask anybody what one wish in the world, what you wish you can do, everybody says go back in time and fix or correct a wrong, etc. So it's always going to carry to every demographic that wants to watch it.
Oh yeah. Matt, do you remember when you first saw what this scenario was when you saw Back to the Future the first time? Again,
with my family. We would go with family night for movies at the Trumbull Mall in Connecticut, but their movie theater there. Me, my brother, and my mom and dad. But you know what's funny? I don't remember the commercials.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't remember those. I don't remember commercials for any movies that I actually went to at an early age. For some reason, I don't know why.
I remember some. We were talking last week about Nightmare on Elm Street, and I remember seeing that trailer a lot. But with Back to the Future, So there were two epic things in my life when I saw it. I guess it would have been 9 years old when it came out. So the first was I went into that movie blind. I saw that probably the second night it was released. It was at the time the most packed theater I'd ever been in. Like, normally I like to sit center, but I was like a little off to the side and I was bummed. I was like, why is this, like, it was a Tuesday night. I'm like, why is this so packed? And not knowing anything about it was like, oh my God. Like, it was just the sense of discovery. Nothing was spoiled for me. All I knew was Michael J. Fox was in this movie. That's all I knew. But secondly, and it's so weird now that I see people point this out that people didn't pick up on this, but I remember being 9 years old and we get to the end of the movie and he runs up to the mall and you see that the sign has changed to Lone Pine Mall. And that was the first movie where I was like, holy shit, that's brilliant. Holy shit, I'm smart because I just figured that out. Like, that was one of the most satisfying moments of my young life in that movie, which is why it's weird now that I'll see YouTube videos and Reddit posts that'll be like, did you know in Back to the Future that at the end, it's not Twin Pines Mall, it's Lone Pine Mall? It's like, yeah, I figured that when I was 9, everybody knows that. Like, that's the most obvious Easter egg ever in a movie. But as a kid, like, that blew my mind, man.
Yeah, it wasn't until
satisfying, like you said.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Roger.
No. I was saying it took me a couple times. I didn't get it the first time I saw it. It wasn't until like the second or third time. And there were a few different little Easter eggs like that that you just keep getting as it goes on. One more thing I wanted to say about Eric Stoltz before we stop talking about him, but I guess apparently he was so into this character that he wanted to be called Marty McFly on set. And he had all the actors and the crew refer to him as Marty. Yeah. And then right before he was fired was when he did that scene with Biff, with Tom Wilson in the diner. And apparently Eric Stoltz kept like being too aggressive. And so Tom Wilson was like, all right, next time I'm going to give him a receipt and rough him up a bit. But then he got recast.
In fact, he was so method and wanted to be called Marty so much. When they went to Christopher Lloyd, who plays Dr. Emmett Brown, they were like, so we think we need to fire Eric. And Christopher Lloyd said, who's Eric? He was like, wait, you mean that Marty kid? Like, that's how we do.
Seriously, what a toolbox.
Yeah.
No, what a toolbox for taking it so serious. And he was a great actor. Everybody thinks the world of him back in the 80s, and that's great. But he could have ruined this movie for everybody forever.
Yeah.
Forever. If playing it in serious, okay, Marty McFly was serious when he had to be serious.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he reacted just like any of us would have if we had to go back in time, identically how I think I would have.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy.
And apparently.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
Apparently, Eric Stoltz also said he saw the movie as a tragedy, because the family comes back, and when he comes back to the future, the family's all rich, and so it's like I missed my whole childhood, you missed your whole life, and that's a tragedy, and so he was kind of playing it that way.
Thank God he didn't get it.
Well, so part of the reason Crispin Glover isn't in part 2 and part 3, and they hired someone literally to put on prosthetics to look like Crispin Glover. Oh, wait, Matt didn't know this. That's amazing that Matt didn't know this. So part of the reason why his role got so reduced, they hired another actor. Crispin Glover sued them and won, and it changed SAG law and rules. They you can't hire an actor. You basically can't fool people into thinking somebody is in the movie. You have to be very clear. Because they tried reusing footage, they tried using prosthetics, they tried doing all these things to essentially trick the audience into thinking it was Crispin by showing him upside down. But part of the reason
they did an amazing job with that too. That was another one I didn't know for a while, that Crispin Glover didn't have anything to do with that second one. I always assumed that was him and that scene.
Yeah, but part of the reason he didn't get asked back, he was seen as difficult. He had a big issue with the ending of the movie.
Yeah.
Not that George McFly had confidence, not that the family turned out better, but his issue was that we're saying that money equals success, or money equals success and fulfillment. And Crispin Glover said, I don't like the message that when Marty changes the future, they come back and George is rich, therefore you assume the family is happy, which I thought was very interesting. That was his big knock on the movie. But
the one thing with that ending, though, when you really do think about it, that is kind of weird that his whole life, he doesn't know what happened when he comes back. He doesn't know what his mom is doing or how many books his dad wrote, or, it's a completely different life. And so that is kind of wild when you think about it. He really doesn't know his whole life.
Yeah, it's strange. And remember the first movie, second movie, and third movie, in Marty McFly's life. This is all like a week, or I guess 2 weeks in his life, roughly.
Right. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
I didn't even think about that. I think you're right.
I got a couple of the chats here.
Yeah,
real
please.
Quick. Stephen Camp noting that the original will always be the best. It is, but I thought with part 2, I have never seen a sequel tie in the first movie as well as part 2 did. Stellar Justin Lopez noting the first scene is so masterful. You learn everything you need to know about Doc from one tracking shot without one word of dialogue being spoken, which it is brilliant. Stephen Camp noting Teen Wolf 2 was a little cheesy for me. That was Jason Bateman.
Just a little.
And Daniel Feldman noting that apparently the Broadway adaptation is really good.
That's what I've heard.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's currently on Broadway.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt's breaking up there a little bit.
Could you hear me or am I muted?
Yeah, we got you now. What were we saying, Matt?
Teen Wolf 2 with Bateman. I thought he did very. Yeah.
Sorry, you broke up there a little, Matt. But
have I heard you?
But I thought he was good. The movie itself was.
Jason Bateman, when you think about it, and I like Jason Bateman a lot, and I love what he's done with Arrested Development. I love Ozark. My favorite show of his will always be It's Your Move, which we've talked about on the wrestling podcast previously. But he kind of had a little bit of a career for the better part of the 80s being kind of like the B-level younger Michael J. Fox. Like a lot of the roles he was cast in, it was very similar. Like that was sort of his shtick for a while, you know?
Which is funny because his real life younger sister was Michael J. Fox's sister in Family
Ties. Yeah, Justine.
Or older sister, sorry, yeah.
Younger sister. Oh, his older sister, Michael J. Fox is younger. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But it is interesting to think about that. But yeah, I think so Matt, it's funny. Part of the reason why I say it's perhaps for our generation, the best movie of our generation, they for years, and this movie never really went away, right? Like it was always popular, but for years when you go to film school, and they're teaching you how to write a script. Back to the Future was the script they would use as an example of a perfect movie script where everything they tell you in the movie pays off later in the movie. Like the economy of plot, the details, what you see about Uncle Joey at the beginning, the dynamic you see between George and Biff, the way you see like, why is Lorraine like so depressed with how her life turned out and drinking so much? Like everything is really laid out for you to where it pays off later in the film. It's just so masterfully written.
Yeah.
I mean, I have nothing to add to that. You're 100% right on that. Yeah, it is.
It's like one of those movies you can't really cut anything out because everything ties into something else later.
There's one thing that's weird. Okay, there's one. It's not a plot hole, but it's the one thing that as you get older and you watch it more, is I still think the scene when Biff assaults Lorraine is still like really heavy. But the part that as you get older is like, why in the fuck are they hanging out with Biff and having him over to wash the car at the end of the movie when it's like, hey, remember the time like in high school that you did this horrible thing to my wife? Like, come over and wax my car.
Because they have to show him being neutered as a bully.
I know.
Bullies don't prosper and don't win. But you can't talk because every time you talk, it cuts my microphone off.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Please. It's the obvious ABC logic for younger kids to see. The bully never wins.
He got his, but for sure. But I get your point, Glenn. Like you wouldn't want to invite that guy to come clean your cars at,
You would. Yeah, hang on. Yes, you would, because he's like I just reiterated. He's been neutered. All of his bullyisms have been taken. He's seen his wrongs in life, if you will. And now, because of all the wrongs he's committed, he's now only left with being able to wash people's cars, apparently, to help satisfy a living. I mean, it answers a lot. I don't know. I thought I answered a lot of questions.
Well, and which is kind of chilling at the beginning of part 2 when he's doing that and he drops the act and starts talking all gravelly and mean.
Yeah, that was great.
Yep.
Another little piece of trivia. Do you know the original script, which actually they had a hard time selling? Like Disney wouldn't take it because the mother-son aspect, with the mom having the crush on the son. So they actually turned it down. But originally, instead of the car, it was supposed to be in a fridge. Like a fridge was supposed to take him back in time or to the future. So that is a genius move that they changed that. to
A refrigerator?
Yeah,
What in the world would even make them think of that?
I know. I mean, well, you guys remember this as kids. How many times did we see the PSA or the Punky Brewster episode or something where it's like, don't hide in a refrigerator?
That's probably why they changed it. And also the ending was not supposed to be a bolt of lightning. It was supposed to be an atomic blast. Like they were supposed to do it out in Nevada or something. But they
What do you mean? Wait, an atomic blast from where? From what?
Nuclear test site in, I think, in New Mexico or Nevada.
And
so in the story Back to the Future, they were going to incorporate atomic blasts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the original script is out there. It's a little bit of a mess. Also, there's the original script of part 2 and 3, which were written together. In the original part 2, they went to the future, but then they went back to the 60s. And it's this whole thing. It's not very, I mean, like I've read it, I'm like, no, this wasn't very good. But, you know, if Crispin Glover had been available, Crispin Glover not being available is part of why they changed it to what they did with George McFly being dead and the alternate 80s and Biff being, I mean, it's so funny. When I'm in downtown Vegas, the Plaza Hotel on Fremont Street was used as the exterior for Biff's Pleasure Palace. So I think of that every time I'm downtown. But that whole thing was originally, that was supposed to be a 1960s sequence. That was supposed to take place instead, where like George McFly was in jail. It was this whole thing for like a political protest. It was
how they changed it.
Yeah, it was a mess. So when you look at the original drafts, goes to show everybody, if you're writing something or doing something, this is why you write and rewrite, and you don't just publish your rough draft, because sometimes something terrible could turn into something quite good.
Well, apparently the atomic blast was changed just because they didn't have the budget for it. Like it was going to be too expensive. They wanted to do that ending, but yeah. And then also the very, very end where where it said to be continued, that wasn't in the original.
No,
the
home
original
video.
movie. Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things was, and Matt, you can appreciate this being in Orlando or being near Orlando, is the Back to the Future ride at Universal.
Yeah, it's actually a really good ride.
Really good.
Is it still there?
No, it's the Simpsons right now.
Well, when like I was a kid, that was a very big, similar to Space Mountain, as far as like your checklist of rides you have to go on when you're a little kid.
I don't know if you've been, Matt, but have you been to Disney World lately?
Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Not in the last 5 years, I would say.
So we rode the Guardians ride there, and it's Space Mountain on steroids. It is the coolest ride I think I've ever ridden.
What's it called? Guardian?
It's the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a roller coaster. It's like Space Mountain in that you're in the dark, except you're in like a giant screen. It's almost like Sphere in Las Vegas, and you know you got the bad guy coming at you. It's really cool.
More importantly, is there a rumor attached to said ride that a photographer stood up in the middle of the ride to take a photo because it was all dark in there with his flash on and got decapitated?
Wait, have you guys ever ridden Space Mountain with the lights on?
I've seen it.
No.
It is terrifying. I've done it before.
They allow you to?
They did it one time when I was in there. It was like an early morning at Disney. It is terrifying.
It's never on. Wait, what?
The lights were on when I was in there one morning.
There's parts of it, but not the whole ride.
I don't know,
right?
dude. Like when you realize how close you are to those beams, like yeah, I mean, to your point, if you stood up in that, like you would die.
So that was what terrified me about the ride, was because there was a rumor amongst and I lived in Connecticut, keep in mind, nowhere near Florida, where everybody at recess was like, oh my God, do whatever you do, don't stand up. If you go on Space Mountain, you'll get decapitated.
I mean, there's video. There's video of it online with the lights on. So it's had the lights on before. It's not
it's on YouTube.
Completely impossible.
Yeah. Did you ever hear that rumor when you were a kid that Alfonso Ribeiro died doing a headspin because he broke his neck?
Who?
Alfonso Ribeiro. He was Carlton in Fresh Prince.
No, because he was on the TV series in front of us every week. No.
Until he showed up on Fresh Prince, because he was in the Michael Jackson Pepsi commercial. And there was a rumor that he had died while they were doing that commercial, doing the headspin. Heard that for years, and it wasn't until Fresh Prince of Bel-Air came out. But I had stopped breakdancing because of that rumor.
Think of the career.
You took your cardboard box out of your garage in your driveway and said no more. You burned it.
Yeah. By the way, the
Raj
breaking
Giri.
soundtrack. And...
Raj Giri could be going to the Summer Olympics next year, where breakdancing will be an Olympic sport. If only he hadn't heard the rumor that Alfonso Ribeiro died doing a headspin and gave up his career.
Wait a minute. Is that really, you're joking, right? That's not going to be a sport in Olympics.
No, it's going to be an Olympic sport next year.
Is it really?
Breakdancing?
Yeah.
Breakdancing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they brought in
Why not
skateboarding.
ballroom dancing?
I don't know, man. Yeah, 2024 Olympic sport. Breaking is going to be a brand new sport starting next year.
I'll be watching it.
Dude, okay, well, it's if you think about it, Matt, it really is. It's got a lot in common with gymnastics.
So let me be clear. I bought the King Tut, and I forget the other guys' names. Like, remember back when you were in grammar school, you go to not the library. What do you call it? The book fair, and you have to buy a book. Your parents will make you buy a book, and they give you money to buy a book, and you don't want to buy a book. Well, I bought King Tut, and I forget the other guy's name, on how to breakdance, and had the cardboard box in the garage and doing all these type of moves and trying to and failing terribly at it. But my brother was very good at it, not me.
I remember the exact book you're talking about. It had like a fold-out poster with the moves and everything. Yeah, it was a big thing. No, I mean, breakdancing, if you look at gymnastic floor routines that people do with the flips and the twist, I mean, breaking has a lot of elements of that. I mean, look, they're trying to get more people to watch the Olympics. That's why they included skateboarding. Although when I saw skateboarding in the Olympics, I was like, this is actually boring. Like, because a lot of these...
do we think people in other countries are going to be breakdancing?
I mean, hey, here's your chance. If somebody wants a cool runnings like journey to the Olympics, get it on the ground floor. You know, I think pick your country, go immigrate there, and be on their breakdance team for Paris 24. You know,
have you seen that Thriller video in like a Manila prison where everyone in the prison is doing the Thriller dance? Which is, it's just, if you haven't seen it, look it up. It is amazing. So I think they've got breakdancing in other countries.
Huh.
Yeah. I don't know. But I was going to say, speaking of Universal, though, one of my greatest regrets of the last 15 years is that we went to Orlando. We went to Disney World for our honeymoon. We went a few places, or we went there a few times on our anniversaries, and we didn't go to Universal when the Jaws ride was open. And I'm so pissed that I missed the Jaws ride at Universal. Jaws being one of my favorite movies of all time, because I've watched the YouTube video of that forever, but they tore that down to make way for the second Harry Potter ride. But it was so cool just to have like the shark attacking you in a boat and stuff.
Was it 3D?
Well, no, it was actually a shark, Raj.
Oh.
Like, this wasn't a screen. Like, you went through this like really large lagoon, and the shark kept attacking you.
Jeez.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like people, I probably would have been terrified of it as a kid. But it's not like when at the Universal Backlot tour and you just drive by and the shark like lunges at your tram. Like, this was, there were multiple encounters. But
going back, with Michael J. Fox in this movie, I was always kind of surprised that movie-wise, it kind of ended there. Like that year, he didn't really have a big hit. Secret of My Success.
Secret of My Success was huge.
Was it huge? I thought it did okay.
It did well for the time, but back then, I mean, remember when we were kids and it was rare that a movie made $100 million? Like, Secret of My Success, I think it was in the top 10 for 87 or 88. Let's see here. Yeah. But that movie, he's basically playing Alex P. Keaton.
Right.
Let me ask you guys a question in our chat room. Is anybody asking any questions about this movie at the moment?
Yeah, here, let's throw a couple more up. Justin Toner bringing up that he loved the Back to the Future ride. Got to go on it in the 90s when I was at Universal Studios. Man, I'm so bummed I missed that.
Yeah.
Stephen Camp's asking a question for you guys. What age did you find out movies had Easter eggs?
It might. I mean, the Lone Pine Mall thing was the first time I remember something where, if you paid attention, you figured it out, and it wasn't mentioned. Yeah. That was probably my first experience with that.
Stellar Justin Lopez wondering. I always wondered how Lone Pine Marty's life compared to Twin Pines Marty.
Yeah,
had the same girlfriend. So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. There was almost a Secret of My Success musical that, like, COVID literally shut down, and it didn't happen.
So 67 million it made in the U.S. and Canada, worldwide 110. So
seventh highest grossing film in 1987 in the U.S. Secret of My Success.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was kind of the last one, right? And then he had supporting roles. He was in The American President in a supporting role.
Frighteners was great.
But that didn't do well.
No, it didn't.
Casualties of War, I heard he was really good in it, but it didn't really do well. So it just kind of, it was kind of like Ralph Macchio, had like super hot years and then just kind of faded away to where he's doing, small roles in My Cousin Vinny.
You know what? The best of those later Michael J. Fox movies is, and I forget the wrestlers that are in it, but I know there's a wrestling Life with Mikey. Life with Mikey is phenomenal. Like, it's not as good as his 80s movies, but I think Michael J. Fox is so good in that, playing a former child star. That movie is so underrated. It's on Disney Plus, I believe.
Wasn't the team in that movie the LA Knights? Like,
you know what?
The basketball team.
Yeah, it might have been. That's funny. I remember Cyndi Lauper plays his assistant in that film. David Krumholtz is like the spoiled child actor. Like, that is a fun movie.
Yeah, it's like Jerry Lawler, I think, is in it, and
That's
Jeff
right.
Jarrett. Yeah.
But yeah, he had a lot of attempts at doing some, other movies, and they finally went back to TV with Spin City,
which was a big hit.
Yeah.
Justin Toner bringing up, I like Fox in The Hard Way with James Woods. I actually really like that movie too. That's kind of underrated.
Yeah. Matt's frozen. His internet should hopefully come back in a minute. But did you watch the Michael J. Fox documentary on Apple TV that came out earlier this year?
No, I need to see that.
It's good. I think that, obviously what he's gone through with Parkinson's and seeing his struggles there, it's very heartbreaking. But it's very interesting how they incorporate footage from his movies, behind the scenes footage, and then footage with the lookalike to try and string together retellings of things that happened.
Yeah.
It's an interesting documentary. I think that the story is compelling, and I've read a few of his books, but it's a good watch. It's definitely a good watch. And it definitely talks about his struggles and what he was dealing with behind the scenes, even before Parkinson's.
Yeah, I need to resubscribe to Apple TV because I still haven't seen the last season of Ted Lasso. So
don't you get it like a year free with every time you buy an Apple device? I don't feel like
my year came up.
Oh, there you go. So, I'm on the iPhone upgrade plan, so I just feel like I keep getting Apple TV. But yeah, it was a good documentary. We just watched that a couple weeks ago.
Was, I'll check that out.
Did you get a chance to watch Totally Killer on Prime Video yet?
Not yet. We've been pretty busy. We've been but I'll have to check that out.
So for people that don't know, and everyone I've recommended this movie to has really liked it so far, it is a slasher film with a time travel element. And what's funny is when the girl protagonist goes back in time and tries to explain what's happening, she keeps saying, like Back to the Future. Like, that's literally how she's trying to explain the movie. But she goes back to 1987. It's a lot of good humor about how things were different then versus now. And it's a slasher film, so it's perfect for Halloween. It's called Totally Killer. It's on Prime Video. Highly recommended. Probably my favorite thing that I've watched lately. What else have you been checking out lately? What else is good?
Well, I saw the original Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street when we were doing our podcast. I watched what's that movie with Jennifer Lawrence where she's
No Hard Feelings.
No Hard Feelings. We just watched that the other night, and that was better than I expected.
That was a lot like an 80s comedy.
Yeah, totally. It had that old school vibe to it where a little raunchy, but just something you could completely turn your brain off, and it was pretty funny. So that one was pretty good.
I've tried to figure this out. Raj. I don't know if you think very much about the type of movies you like and what you like about them, but movies like Back to the Future, I love movies like Just One of the Guys, or Tootsie. And I started thinking about this because a time travel movie and a movie like No Hard Feelings, these are all movies essentially about somebody pretending to be someone they're not. Because even if you're traveling through time, you're pretending to be someone you're not.
Right.
I think I love movies where people experience life from a new perspective, and they all kind of end the same. Where it was like, yes, I was lying to you and I was deceiving you, but I genuinely have feelings for you, or I genuinely care about you. Like all these movies have that in common, right? Where there's deception, like well-meaning deception is like, and it's weird to figure out, like, that's my favorite genre of movie. Like, I will watch any movie, even Soul Man. I will watch any movie where someone is pretending to be someone else, and then they start for the wrong reasons and maybe, end doing it for the right reasons. Like, I love that. And I don't know why, but that is my favorite genre of film.
No, I got a question for you. Where does Back to the Future 2 rank in your sequels? Like as far as great sequels go, would it be like top 10, top
I think
5?
it's top 10, but it's really the second 2/3 of the movie that are carrying that. Like the first third, I don't need to watch the first third of Back to the
Really?
Future.
When
like,
they're in the future?
it's fine. It's silly. The back. Here's the thing about the Back to the Future movies. With the exception of the first third of Back to the Future 2, that is not a silly trilogy. They do everything. There's winks, nods, and little jokes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some of that future stuff. Let me put it this way. I don't think the 2015 stuff has aged well, and it's aged worse now that we're actually past 2015.
But the shoes, the hoverboards,
the shoes are cool. Hoverboard's cool.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand
Flying cars. They're starting to make those.
Okay, you know what it is? Let me tell you what it is. It's the scene when they're at Marty's house and all the stuff with the video screen and needles and the two ties and the rehydrated pizza. Like, that's the part I could skip. That's my issue with it. But to Sarah Justin Lopez's point, Godfather 2, phenomenal. Terminator 2, Terminator 2 is probably the greatest sequel ever made.
Yeah. Lethal Weapon 2, I put up there.
It's
I think
good.
Lethal Weapon 2 is better than the original.
Yeah. I mean, they're good.
There aren't many.
But Back to the Future 3, I mean, look, there ain't that many part 3s of movies. Back to the Future 3 is perhaps, top 5 of the part 3s.
I mean, I don't know. Too much Doc in
Too much
his
Doc.
romance. Too much of him and his romance for my taste. That
that.
all their scenes just bored the hell out of me.
The part that gets me pumped, honestly, and I remember at the end of part 2, because I remember at the end of part 2, I was like, I need to digest this. But when they show the scene where they're posing in front of the clock tower, like as a kid, like misty-eyed, I was like, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I was so stoked for that. But I like part 3 a lot. I think part 3, it's weird when ZZ Top shows up. Like, that's the one part in part 3 where I'm like, why is ZZ Top in this movie?
Yeah.
But no, and the end of part 3, look, okay, let's be real about this. Again, Back to the Future 1, perfect movie. But let's talk about the biggest flaw in Back to the Future 2 and 3. Marty and the goddamn chicken thing. It makes no sense. It is the most shoehorned in, and I say this with love to Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. That is the most shoehorned in character plot point to give Marty a little arc from part 2 to part 3, and it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were trying to teach a little lesson in how that changed his life forever. So yeah, I think they needed something where Marty grew from the whole experience.
But there was no sign of that in part 1. There was no hint of that in part 1.
Right, but were people calling people chicken back in the 50s?
Oh, well, okay, let me point this out, and this just occurred to me. Internet, let me blow your mind with this Back to the Future plot hole I just figured out. If Marty had this trigger that someone could call him chicken or yellow, and he would do something to prove them wrong. In part 1, why is Jennifer talking to him about sending in his demo to the record company, and Marty won't do it? Why doesn't Jennifer say, what's the matter? Are you scared? Are you chicken? If that's the big character-defining flaw Marty McFly has, that's the biggest plot hole in the entire movie. Matt, we're talking about this Marty and the don't call me chicken thing in part 2 and part 3. I felt like that was very forced.
You thought it was what?
Forced.
Stupid?
Yeah, it was forced.
Yeah. I mean, I really didn't care about it, honestly, when I would go back and watch it again. But yeah, look, especially nowadays, like when you go back and watch it. But back then, like, don't you remember being like, hey, what are you, chicken? Bok, bok? And you'd make fun of your friend or whoever in the playground doing it. Like, as corny as that may sound to kids today, like, that was a big rank out back in the day.
Yeah. But the standard response, though, Matt, into the 80s would have been like, come on, guys. Like, stop it. Like, I'm not chicken, okay? My mom just said I can't do it, and I have to respect that. She's going to grab me and take away my teeth.
So you mean to tell me you won't fly off the handle because someone called you chicken? No?
So Matt, sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it.
One thing you missed. We were talking about the best part 2s of all time, and we were saying Justin Lopez had mentioned Dark Knight, Godfather 2, Terminator 2. I threw Lethal Weapon 2 in there, but I think Back to the Future 2 makes my top 10. What kind of makes your list?
Number 1, number 2. Second movie in a series, honestly. Not saying a lot because I loved Rocky too.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Creed 2.
I still put Back to the Future 2 ahead of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Creed 2 was good. Rocky 2 is good. Rocky 2 is a very long movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so listen, the reason why I like Back to the Future 2 so much is because, again, he gets to go into the future. Like, that's everybody's wish. It's either going back in time or going forward in time and be able to come back to your normal life in between. Like, that's the end all be all, I think, for a lot of young kids and their imaginations.
Do you think there's a better setting than the Old West that they could have chose for part 3 to go back in time to?
So, when I first saw it, I wasn't a fan of the Western setting. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
But as I got older, it did grow a hell of a lot on me.
Mm-hmm.
It did.
What about you, Glenn?
I mean, the problem is that where were they going to go? Back to like Prohibition and they're like in Biff's ancestors. Actually, I think that's in the video game where like Biff's ancestors, like Al Capone, like it all would have. I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, what were they going to ancient Rome? Like, I don't know. What were they going to do? You know?
I don't know. The Western setting, I don't know. It just didn't work for me.
Yeah,
it wasn't bad. I still think I really like part 3, but I didn't think it was anywhere near the first 2.
Yeah, but I enjoy it though, and I'm glad that we're never getting another sequel. We're never getting another reboot, or we're never getting a reboot. Like, we got the series, we got the ride, and there was that cartoon that lived for 2 seasons on CBS in the early 90s. And there have been some comic books. Yeah, like even this, man, let me tell you, they did this comic book for the 30th anniversary Back to the Future Day. They did this in 2015. And the comic book at first, it's written by Bob Gale, who co-wrote the movies. And it was like, oh, we're going to find out how Marty and Doc met. Oh, we're going to find out what happened with Uncle Joey. Like, the comic was really cool for like 4 issues. And then it was just like, this is just masturbatory at this point. Like, this is all just completely made up shit that doesn't feel like the movies at all and isn't interesting, you know?
So Doc sells it though. Like, going back to series 2, the part 2 rather, like, he sold it from the first one. When they come back at the end of the movie, he comes back and he completely sells everybody in that theater to, you have to come back and watch the second one.
Yeah. When that was supposed to be a joke. I mean, they literally did that first ending not intending to make a sequel. They were like, this is just a funny way to end the movie.
Yeah. You know, they've done...
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they say they'll never do a reboot, I'm so glad. But they've been doing such a good job lately of, like, with Top Gun, with Maverick, and then with Karate Kid, with Cobra Kai. And taking...
What do they all have in common? But what do they all have in common? Who are they? The successful ones, who are they using?
Who's that?
The common denominators are using the original characters
to
shoot the reboot.
Yeah.
Not all reboots do that. Most of them, in fact, don't. That's why they suck.
Right.
Versus the reboots that are smart enough to use the Tom Cruise and Top Gun, Maverick,
Rocky,
Emil LaRusso, Creed, all of them.
Yeah, and you can't really do that with Doc and Marty now.
I mean, look, Christopher Lloyd, God bless him. We've learned that he wants to work. Like, he's done Doc and a lot of Doc-esque stuff, but it's like Michael J. Fox will never do that. I mean, he's not, because of his Parkinson's, he's not capable of carrying a lead role. He does cameos now and again in things. But I mean, I think it's good that we haven't had that. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, did you see Michael J. Fox's cameo when he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah, that was good.
Seasons ago. He was hilarious.
Yeah, he's still funny.
No.
But I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, this movie's sacred, we can't reboot it. But Back to the Future is like one of the few, and I like when movies reference it. I like the genre it's fun. In Avengers Endgame, when they go back in time, they even reference like, so this time travel thing, and they're like, no, it doesn't quite work like Back to the Future. Like, I like that's become how people understand time travel.
Yeah, it's one of the, say it again, one of the greatest movies ever made, especially if you take out dramas, because I think a lot of times when people think of great movies, they think of, dramas, your Schindler's List and things like that. But this is, for just a fun, popcorn, entertaining movie, I think it's the best.
Yeah. And there's not many movies that I'll be like, don't reboot. Or a sequel. I would love a good Jaws sequel in my lifetime.
Mhm.
I would love a serious Jaws sequel. That would make me very happy.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so it's now 51 minutes into our show.
Yes.
Can we go over some other things I wanted to talk about, if that's okay?
Please.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've ad nauseum probably at this point, if you guys go back in time. Raj, me and Glenn are always talking up Eli Drake. You can see my fat finger on the screen, not being cut off. And his potential. And why is this guy not a main event talent? Not forget being signed with WWE. Why is this guy not a main event caliber talent with WWE? And I've been watching each week and watching his rise, and I still feel as amazing as he's doing with it. He's knocking it out of the park. He is. He's in a ring with Cena and Roman Reigns just recently, and I still felt he looked like the star, which is saying a lot because usually, I'll be honest, when I see Cody in that scenario, no disrespect to him, I still think Roman's a bigger star than Cody. I still feel John Cena's a bigger star than Cody.
Mm-hmm.
When I see LA Knight out there, and especially when he starts talking, just everything about him screams main event star. And he belongs with them. If not, I'm going to be honest, supersedes him even with that vibe he gives off that he's a huge, bigger star. Not he's a bigger star than them, but he comes across as big, if not bigger. And that's just an unwritten, like tangible that you either have or you don't. And we've not, in my opinion, we've not seen the likes of somebody like that gives off the aura that they are that big of a huge star than he does, because we've seen huge monsters, physical, just marvels physically, bodybuilders, giants, 7 feet tall, but also jacked. We've never seen them be able to put the whole package together with being on the microphone added into that equation, right? And so when I see him do that, I'm just blown away and happy that he's finally arrived. I still think they waited too long. I do. They took a sweet ass time on doing and bringing him where he should be at this point. Which was frustrating to watch, if you guys remember. But I'm happy to see him there now, and I'm disappointed in a little bit of a way because they're not going to have him beat Roman. No. The only one that's going to beat Roman coming up is going to be Cody.
Yeah, but do they have him beat Seth at WrestleMania? Like, does this still lead to? It's kind of crazy when you think about just a little over a year ago, he was Max Dupree, like to go from a manager and almost fired, like he thought he was getting fired, to where he is now. And to your point, when he's in there with Cena and Roman, he has this poise and he just carries himself in a way that he doesn't come across as any less than any of those guys. He, like you said, he has this main event poise and everything that he just feels like a huge star when he's out there. The fact that they didn't have him on WrestleMania still is almost unforgivable to me.
Yes, it is.
He was getting super over way before that.
Yes, you're 100% right. And I also just like even the line that delivered Roman Reigns, like, you just pissed your pants. Like he says it with so much bass and authority in his voice. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you gave that to somebody else, granted, he made that up. They did not write that for him. Let's be honest. But let's say a writer did write that for a character to say, they would not deliver it with the same mannerisms and the same bass in their voice and believability that he does. He believes he's a bigger star. I've worked with him. He thinks he is a big star because he is. I'm not saying he's arrogant. He's right. He is. He absolutely is.
Yeah. He doesn't.
You gotta believe it.
He doesn't let anyone try to humble him. He's like, I'm the shit, and I'm going to show it.
Yep. No matter who you throw me in here with. Roman's been off for a month and a half. Great. I can't wait to rip him apart. Like, right. And he did. Whereas most people would shrink in that moment with John Cena and Roman in the same ring, both having opportunities to speak on the mic and cut him off at any point if they didn't like what he was saying, right? And they couldn't. In fact, John Cena looked like his biggest boy cheerleader, right?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, wow, so Cena's come and gone now. He's a little bit past the time now. Oh my God, we're old.
Right.
He looked like a cornball doing that. I love John. He looked like a cornball doing that. But it made, in my opinion, him look even bigger as a star.
Yeah.
Like he was the cool one. He was the cool one in the ring, and John no longer was.
And you saw it earlier this year when he did that thing with when they did that little thing with Undertaker and Bray Wyatt. But LA Knight right in his face, not acting scared or anything. He's acting like he belonged.
And Raj, to your point, they weren't even going to do anything with him at that point. Remember, they did not
Right.
really start that push yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And he's still, you're absolutely right. He stood out in that segment with Undertaker.
Right.
One thing I want to get your thoughts on, Matt. And Raj, remember this time because this will make a good clip. Matt, what do you think about Impact going back to the TNA branding?
Oh my God, how did I not say that's a subject I wanted to talk about? I should have said that as a subject as I wanted to talk about. I think that's awesome. I think it's about time. I think everybody will always associate Impact like, oh, Impact Wrestling. They always say TNA. Like all of my stuff, when people make up my own bios, I don't even get to do it myself on my Wikipedia page. Some rando gets to just create whatever they want to create and write whatever they write on any of our Wikipedia pages, by the way. So that's why people can't trust Wikipedia. With that said, they will always not refer to it as Impact. They always refer to it as TNA. And I do think that's smart that they went back to that. And for those like, oh my God, what a disgusting acronym, TNA. Get it? Yeah. The only person that gets that is like, what, 1999, 2000, and I'll give him credit. 2001, Vince Russo. Get it, TNA? Nobody cares. Nobody thinks that way. It's total nonstop action, and they made a big enough splash, in my opinion, of being able to build that brand as such, as TNA Wrestling.
Yeah. I think it'll be exciting. It'll be exciting. They're going to do their first pay-per-view under that branding again in January in Vegas.
Yeah.
Who was just inducted in the Hall of Fame? I saw Tracy Brooks, and I saw Tenay and Don West.
Yeah.
Was there anybody else?
Nope, that was it.
Fans, don't be scared to start sending Scott D'Amore petitions of your boy here. We're putting non-champions in there. They're not putting non-champions in there. Hook your boy up. Come on.
There you go.
Jackson agrees.
Well, there you go. Well, I think that'll do it for this week. I got to run. I got to watch Halloween Havoc so I can podcast about that later on Wrestling Inc. Everybody, do us a favor. Like, share, subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, please. Follow Matt BP, Matt Morgan, Rogers at the Raj Giri, and McFly and Rubenstein. Matt, I'll give you the final word.
Subscribe.
That'll do it. Catch you back next time on Gigantic Pop.